What's up everyone, welcome back to a brand new video on Lexalexus. Well, this is it. There's going to be no Championship or Premier League football in the next 3 to 4 weeks due to the World Cup now happening in just under a week's time. It's crazy how quickly football is just evolving each day. I'll be talking through my reaction to all of the games in the Championship weekend. In terms of the Prediction League, I have posted an updated standings of the Championship and the Premier League Prediction League in my latest community tab. So guys, make sure you check out my latest community tab to see if you can find your name in any of those leagues. If you guys like what you see, please give the video a like. It does tremendously out the channel. Please do hit that subscribe button if you've not done so. It really helps to grow this channel. And please also share the channel too. All of this really helps to grow this channel. But without any further ado, let's start reviewing what on earth went on in this weekend's games. Let's start off with Friday's game, Birmingham and Sunderland, and it ended up being an away win for Sunderland. I've said this before about Sunderland, that they've just been better away from home than they have been at home. What surprised me a little bit is just that Birmingham didn't turn up with the goods, because you can see with the form here that Birmingham have been doing relatively well with their form. This is their first defeat in 5 matches. Sunderland have just been there and thereabouts, just inconsistently we're having form really. They're not really been consistently having a string of wins and defeats together, and those odd wins now and again are making Sunderland being around in that mid-table position in around 15th place of the table. The goal scorers for Birmingham and Sunderland, well, there was definitely one goal that I definitely want to talk about. I mean, Edson scored the first one, and the fact that I think Sunderland scored first, I think made things very comfortable for them. I think what Sunderland really worked on, which I'm impressed with, is that they are now starting to hold on to leads much better as well. It's something I criticised them from game 1 when they threw that lead away against Coventry, but since then they've worked on their game management, and it has been something which I actually think has improved since Tony Mowbray has actually come in. Amad Diallo made it 2-0, and it was a stunning strike. What a goal from Amad Diallo. And it's something I've been waiting for Amad Diallo, because I thought he was a really positive signing, but he hasn't really turned out the way I expected. So hopefully for his part, he's now going to be a lot more consistent when the World Cup ends, and he can potentially start a little bit more for Sunderland. Lukas Jugovic makes it 2-1. So it ends with a defeat for Birmingham, but I think they'll be content being in this position of the table going into the World Cup. Sunderland closed the gap onto Birmingham, and in fact only separate by 1 point. So I'd say both clubs, considering the turmoil that both have had in one stage of the season at a time, I think both would be very happy of where they're at currently in the Championship. Now let's go to the 3 o'clock Saturday games. So Bristol City and Watford ended as a 0-0 draw. If we engage the stats here, it does look like that Bristol City were the team asking more questions, although there was only 2 shots on target in the entire match. I think Watford had the second lowest XG as well out of all the 24 teams in the Championship this weekend. So a bit of a disappointing performance by Watford by the looks of things. It definitely wasn't a performance that didn't really reflect the form of Watford whatsoever. It does keep them in 4th, and I've got to say, considering where they were, especially with Bilic coming in, and the fact they were slightly below the top 6 or in and around, not looking very secure in the top 6 when they had Edwards in charge, they've now opened a tiny gap, a 2-point gap from 7th place QPR, and I do think their form is improving. I still don't think they've reached their potential, but I think with Watford, the best is yet to come. Bristol City, if you see here, they have now gone through a winless run, and I think they'll be more relieved than anything that the World Cup is coming their way. With the injuries that they've got in their defensive line, they need that time away from league football to get those players back to full fitness and to get them recovered. So I think a good time for Bristol City to get this World Cup, but I'm going to be intrigued to see if they can kick on after this World Cup, because honestly, for them to be 18th place with the squad that they got, it's definitely not good enough in terms of their expectations. Cardiff and Sheffield United ended as a 1-0 victory to the away side, which briefly saw Sheffield United at the top of the table. You can see in that first half, not a lot happened. If we actually get the stats together, you can see Sheffield United, only had 1 shot, with Cardiff having 8. But 0 shots on target in that entire first half alone.
you could see in the second half, look how much open it was. 5 shots on target to Sheffield United from 2 from Cardiff. So it looks like Heckingbottom really gave his team, a right go at half time, wanting more, and they clearly delivered on that. The 64th minute, George Baldock made it 1-0 to the Blades. What that does in the table, it puts Sheffield United second place going into the World Cup. And I think second place is good for Sheffield United at the moment. I think it's very clear that they wanted to get promoted. That's their ambition for the season. They're currently doing that at the moment. I just fear that maybe in terms of their balance, it could be slightly off, especially with their midfield options. I think their strikers have improved, being a bit more clinical, and defensively they have worked on some things as well. It's now down to that consistency and whether they can have a consistent midfield for me. I think that's the one area I'm still a little bit shaky about. Cardiff is a very strange one for me because you can see they're a bit similar with Sunderland. They'll pick up the odd win, but then they also sandwich a couple of defeats in there as well. But to have 3 defeats and 5 is not really what I would feel pretty comfortable with if I was a Cardiff supporter there. 24 points in 21 is just over a point a game, which would on paper be, survival in terms of a points per game ratio. But considering how close they are, they're only 1 point above 22nd place Wigan and only 2 ahead of 23rd place Blackpool. That region of the table from 23rd all the way up to Stoke City in 17th place is really tight. So I think all of those teams down there would feel very relieved, maybe with the exception of West Brom. They will feel very relieved that they've got a World Cup on their hands and they can use this time to regroup. And with Sheffield United, they'll be ecstatic that they're in the top 2 because I definitely think that's what they've got ambitions for this season. One team who I know will not be happy for the World Cup is Coventry because they are on absolute fire with their form at the moment. That is 4 wins in a row to Mark Robins' team. I was personally very shocked to see that Mark Robins wasn't even considered manager of the month. And I felt if they are going to do a manager of the month for November, they've got to really consider Mark Robins. I mean, he's had a completely flawless run with November. No other manager has managed to do that, perhaps with the exception of Carlos Corberán. So something tells me, in terms of my pick of manager of the month of November, it'll either be Corberán for West Brom or it'll be Mark Robins for Coventry. I think both have done equally as well to be the leader of the turnaround of both those teams' seasons. With QPR on the other hand, it's another game where they don't score a goal. You can see that's 3 defeats in a row. Since Michael Beale has been linked with Rangers and Wolves and a couple of high-profile jobs, QPR have struggled ever since, and they have got their key players back as well. I needed to check to see if Ilias Chair was actually starting this game because obviously he is going to play in the World Cup for Morocco, I believe. So it was something that I actually didn't bother to check. But it looks like he has started as captain. So what I was thinking that perhaps maybe some players in the squad, if they're going to the World Cup, they're not going to give their absolute best, to make sure that they don't get an injury. Look at the James Maddison situation currently. So I do think maybe Ilias Chair maybe didn't give a 10 out of 10 performance with the World Cup on his mind. I think that has proved to be a bit of a hindrance quite recently with teams with a lot of players going into the World Cup. So now that is now over and now the World Cup's going to continue, all they're going to be hoping now is that their prized assets are not going to be lowered down in value based on injuries sustained in this tournament. Coventry, to repeat, they would not like this World Cup to be timed as well it was, but this form right here, to have 2 games in hand as well and to only be, 3 points off the top 6 now, in fact even less, only 2 points off the top 6 with 2 games in hand. How on earth have Coventry done this when they were bottom of the table last month? A round of applause has got to go to Mark Robins. He's done an exceptional job. A team who I am struggling to see how they're going to improve is Huddersfield at the moment. You can see they had the one tiny spell of momentum there, but if you see stats, you can see it was Swansea that felt that they should have got something there. But if it wasn't too, one-sided, you can see 4 shots on target to 6. But it's another example again for Swansea having many chances, 16 shots, but only having 6 on target, which is nearly a 33%, about a 40% accuracy with shots on target, which is really not good whatsoever. Once again, them having a lot of the ball, but not really utilising it to create goal-scoring opportunities. And likewise with QPR, I think Swansea will be ecstatic with his World Cup right now, because clearly things are not going right. I mean, they've only lost 1 in their last 5, but you can see that they're winless in their last 5, and that's going to be a really big issue. And I think now they've got this break, they can reevaluate things. Maybe they can allow some players to recover from injury. I think now this is a great time for Swansea to recover. For Huddersfield, it's strange as well, because I think they've been quite inconsistent. They've not necessarily been cut adrift, because they're only 4 points off safety, and they've got a game in hand as well. So they win that game in hand, then, you know, it only turns to 1 point of safety. So definitely Huddersfield are not out of it yet, but definitely how Fotheringham is going to react to this team during the World Cup could make or break their season. So he's got a really big job on his hands in the next couple of weeks. Liam Rosenior suffers his first defeat as Hull's new manager, as Reading pick up their first win in 6 to get themselves a 2-1 win. It was a really big win for Reading. You can see there they have had some poor form, having 3 defeats in their last 4. This win really did come out of nowhere, and this was a Hull City side that were unbeaten still with Liam Rosenior in charge. And things did go really well for Hull right at the start. They went 1-0 up to Jacob Greaves very early on. Yaku Mate made it 1-1 going into half-time, and we thought, okay, it's going to be quite an equal game. But the 94th minute, with a devastating own goal by Ryan Longman, ends up with Hull losing out and Reading gaining all 3 points. And with Reading being 12th place going into the World Cup, I think likewise with Birmingham, considering what they were expected, they would take that every single day of the week. Hull City, on the other hand, I think this season has definitely gone way below than what they were expecting. And I definitely think the expectations are going to have to be flexed and adjusted based on the current situations that they find themselves. And I think Liam Rosenior does have a pretty tricky job on his hands. But if there's anyone who's intelligent enough, who knows the Championship, that can get a turnaround with this team, you know, a player who has played for Hull City before in Liam Rosenior, I think will be a really good role model for that. So good times for Reading as they finally picked up their first away win in a while. And for Hull, there's definitely a lot more work for them to do. Luton, with their first game without Nathan Jones as their manager, ends up with a 1-1 draw over Rotherham. Now, it felt like to me, if you can see by the attack momentum and you can see in the stats there, Luton did look like they earned at least a draw, if anything, potentially all 3 points. You can see 10 shots to 4 there with 4 shots on target to 1. So practically for the whole game, in terms of creating chances, holding the ball, it was Luton who were the better side. But Rotherham have done this so many times before, where they would hold on to a lead and make the game very difficult for the opposition despite holding a lot of the ball. Jamie Lindsay scored literally within seconds. So poor setup by Mick Harford in the start of the game for Luton Town. He'd be very disappointed with that they switched off this early on. But apart from that, for the rest of the game, I actually thought they did all right. The equaliser came in a little bit late, probably for Luton's liking, with Luke Berry getting the equalising goal. A bit fortunate in the way that they got in with coming in from a deflection. But definitely you would have felt with how this game was going. Another example of a team just having so many chances and holding onto the ball but not creating enough. Luton created enough to get a point, but you'd think with the attack momentum that they should have got more than that. So a little bit disappointing for Luton, as they'll be looking at this time to try and recruit a new manager. Once again, this is going to be a crucial decision. But Luton find themselves in 10th place in the table, so they would need to have a catastrophic season for it to go potentially wrong. But having said that, they are only 7 points clear of the bottom 3. I'm telling you, no one is safe this year, and it really makes the Championship very unpredictable, which I'm really excited about. With Rotherham, they are down in 16th place. I think definitely they would take 16th place Rotherham. They would take that like right now at the end of the season.
They are definitely not safe, but they have got a tiny gap within 3 points. What can let them down is that if they have got injuries to key players and they go through a losing streak like they had quite recently, you can see that they had a form of 3 defeats in a row. They can't do that again, otherwise Rotherham will start getting dragged into it. I think definitely that brilliant win over Sheffield United has definitely kept them above in terms of the relegation battle so far, but it's now just maintaining that confidence and making sure that they sneak up this occasional away or home win. I'm telling you this, not many people saw this coming. Norwich 1, Middlesbrough 2, and I don't think I saw a single one of my commenters at least predict this outcome. If any of you did, I apologise, because this was definitely a shock, and based on what was happening in this game, it definitely felt like that this was Norwich's day, and it felt that Middlesbrough were a little bit underperforming in terms of what we were used to, especially with Michael Carrick going in. Josh Sargent scored early on, and we thought, okay, happy days for Norwich. You know, it looks like that they've picked up a decent win here. Then Ronnie McGree completely smashes a rifle shot right in the net, almost out of nothing, to make it 1-1. And then Matt Crooks, who has not scored in over 10 matches, in the 92nd minute makes it 2-1. But if you see this here, it does look like a game of 2 halves. Whilst Norwich took the lead, they did quite well. But in the second half, I don't know what was Norwich's management, but they clearly didn't manage to deal with Middlesbrough whatsoever. 14 shots to 11, 6 shots to 3 there. So 8 to 4 and 0 on target for Middlesbrough. If we go to the second half, you can see there, Middlesbrough edged it. So it was clearly a good sense of attitude from this Middlesbrough team. You know, I think that's definitely one thing that's improved since Carrick's come in. It looks like that they give a damn more. It looks like that they are fighting. It looks like they are going for it now, Middlesbrough. And this is a good win. I mean, I'll tell you this, considering Middlesbrough were right in the bottom 3, and for them to be 14th place at this stage and to be only 4 points of playoffs, Middlesbrough would have snapped your hands off to be in that position before the World Cup, but they are. It goes to show how open this season is. Now, Norwich in 5th, they would not be happy with that at all. They are 9 points behind Burnley, of course, at the top of the table. They would have been expected to be in the top 2. And I do think some pressure will be on Dean Smith, especially if things start to continue the way that they are going after the World Cup ends as well. So I definitely think, you know, Dean Smith, if he doesn't pull it together, he will be under fire soon. I think we can safely say that no one got this score right. Preston 2, Millwall 4. This game goes against all of our preconceived ideas, with Preston, a team not conceding many goals. It's actually the second time in 4 games that Preston have conceded more than 4 goals in a game. And for Millwall, with their poor away form, in fact having one of the worst away forms in the league, we wouldn't have expected Millwall to get a result. But lo and behold, Millwall's brilliant form against Preston continues in a 4-2 victory. You could see with your talent momentum, it's looking like that Preston were the more likely team. Look at that, 17 shots to 6. It's almost like that they've gone completely against their morals, or like completely against their plan that they had at the start of the season, which is to be a bit more pragmatic, you know, not to have many chances, but to be clinical. And it's almost like they had to act in that way because they were put in a really difficult position to be 2-0 down to 2 Zion Fleming goals in the 16th minute. Definitely made things very nervy. Now, the 2-1 goal, there was some back and forth, whether it's an own goal or an Andy Hughes goal. I need to look at it again for me to get my opinion on it. Ched Evans with a brilliant equaliser makes it 2-2, and I've got to say, Preston did well to make it 2-2 going into half time. But in that second half, it just felt like that whilst Preston were huffing and puffing, Millwall always carried a threat. They reserved their energy well. Zion Fleming in the 64th minute makes it 3-2, and Charlie Questwell finishes it off to make it 4-2. This is a stellar win for Millwall. It actually ends them in the top 6 before the World Cup, which they've barely been in that top 6 position at all this season. So Millwall will be taking that, considering if you look at their form of 2 draws and a loss in their last 3, to now have that brilliant win there and an away win, this will be very encouraging times. Preston, it ends their winning streak. They had 3 wins in a row, and now they've had this bizarre defeat there. You can see that, you know, they also had a defeat there, which was, you know, the other time when I talked about it was another 4-2 loss as well. So you've seen, to me, a Preston team that would lose the odd game by a wacky scoreline, but in general, they do tend to get results. So it's going to be now a test to see, can Preston be consistent enough to be in top 6? For me, not quite, but it's now going to be interesting to predict the trend. You know, is this Preston team now going to fall with their form, or if it's going to stay consistent, are they going to stay there? Because if it stays as it is, I think Preston will be top half, but just won't be top 6, sadly. What a win this is for West Brom. 2-0 victors against Stoke City. It's another game that's gone horribly wrong for Stoke City. I mean, you could look at this inconsistent form there. You know, literally 2 wins sandwiched with their 3 defeats there. You know, had one of those wins been a loss there, you'd have seen Stoke in the bottom 3. That is how close this whole table is. This win for West Brom, though, has really come at a time where they would have really hoped that World Cup wasn't going to happen anytime soon. To have 3 wins in a row, 3 of those 5 wins have just come for those 3 wins in a row, which is unbelievable to think that, you know, in 17 games, West Brom only won 2 games. It's outrageous, really. But Corran, to be fair to him, for the fact he's taken West Brom out of the bottom 3, he will be looked as a hero for now. And I think now that West Brom actually won quite comfortably as well, and not by a 1-0 scoreline as they did have in their previous wins, I think it is a step in the right direction there. 16 shots to 12, so they're actually asking a lot of questions. And to be fair, whilst they didn't really do too much in the second half, they did do enough. That Brandon Thomas Asante goal, just incredible. You know, we don't ever see that in the Premier League anymore. A Rooney-esque bicycle kick to score the second goal. I mean, absolutely incredible. We had some stunning goals this weekend, but Thomas Asante probably is going to be my pick of the bunch. Absolutely incredible technique there. West Brom now in a better position than what they found themselves. Definitely not what they wanted to expect before the World Cup, but considering what they were going through, this is a really good place for them to be, you know, at this stage. And I think they'll feel gutted that they can't play more games, you know, due to the World Cup taking place. For Stoke, they're just staying inconsistent right now. And is Alex Neil the right man? For me, it feels like no one's the right man. Something really needs to happen. Like a real reset switch needs to be hit with Stoke City. And they really need to try and take a few steps backwards to try and take a bigger step forward. Because there's zero progress, and if anything, it's always a slight regression as well, which is making me a little bit nervous to see how Stoke are going to cope in future matches. This was a golden opportunity for Wigan Athletic, and they took it with open arms with only their 2nd home win of the season. This is why Wigan are down there in the bottom 3 with only 2 home wins all season. And I'm telling you, this squad can do well. I do think, looking at this, it is the weakest squad in the league, maybe joint weakest with Huddersfield's squad. But there's no doubt in my mind it's got talent. And this was Wigan's first game actually without Liam Richardson. It was actually, you know, a moment which happened as I was working and I wasn't able to have a chance to give you my reaction. But it does feel very strange. They offered Liam Richardson a 3-year contract 2 weeks ago and now they sack him. It is a very bold move by Wigan, and they really got to make sure that they appoint the right manager. I look at Neil Critchley being a potential good replacement there, but are they going to go for Critchley? I don't know. I need to look at the bookies' favourites, to be honest, but Critchley was immediately one of the first names that I thought of. The goals came in with Gary Medine actually taking the lead for Blackpool, despite Blackpool going down to 10 men very early on. Ekpiteta managing to get a red card very early on in the 17th minute, and it was as Charlie White was put through 1-on-1 on goal. So it definitely was like a taking one for the team moment, and the fact that Gary Medine took the lead, I was thinking, right, Wigan are really throwing this away and they're really not giving me hope. But McLean and then Curtis Till making it 2-1 to Wigan made me think, okay, now they've taken their advantage and now they'll feel a little bit better about themselves going into the World Cup. You know, they are now only, well, they're joint on points with West Brom actually. So it's only goal difference that's putting them down in the bottom 3 currently. So I definitely think it's not impossible for Wigan to turn this around, but it's really going to be down to who they pick here. You know, it was quite a strange decision to sack Richardson in the way that they did. So we'll find out very, very soon after the World Cup to see if they're going to regret that decision or not.
For Blackpool, on the other hand, what has gone wrong there? 4 defeats in a row. So from looking promising that they could compete in this level with Appleton Bull with Blackpool, now with 4 defeats in a row. And I was saying this about Rotherham, if you're going to have a long train of losing streaks, you're going to be finding yourselves in a relegation dogfight, and that's what Blackpool have done. They will now be relieved that they've got the World Cup to kind of distract the situation that they're on. What I hope they don't do is try and potentially sack Appleton and try and change things again. You know, I definitely think the World Cup break is going to be interesting. We've already had half of the Championship teams sack their managers, which is incredible in itself. I think now we can have a little bit of a break for us content creators to try and keep up with all the managerial departures. And then the final game to review before I take a small break from YouTube is Burnley 3, Blackburn 0. The East Lancashire derby returned onto our TV screens, and it wasn't the best game for me to watch, especially the first half. The second half, however, was definitely much more interesting. I was definitely more hooked in terms of the second half. It was a 0-0 draw going into half time, but Kaminsky made 2 brilliant reflex saves, right in the final 5 minutes of that first half. The goals started flying in. Ashley Barnes, who hadn't scored a single Championship goal this season, scored 2 goals, his first 2 goals of the season. Undoubtedly, he got man of the match. The first goal was brilliantly worked, actually, by Zaroury with a brilliant cross and just a header from 2 yards out. Then Zaroury got a goal from his own. Brilliant build-up play, actually. I believe it was by Brownhill, actually. And Nathan Teller, since he came on the pitch, actually, did play a really big part in the second and the third goal. And then Ashley Barnes get with the third. Once again, Brownhill getting involved. Benson did quite well, and Teller was a big part of this game too. So a lot of the attacking players for Burnley, for me, really turned up in that game. And Blackburn, for me, was shocking. They really didn't offer anything. I think they only had a 0.04 XG in the entire match. Only 1 shot they had, and 1 shot on target. To be fair, it was a decent shot from Brereton Diaz, which forced Muric in a decent save. But other than that, absolute no threat. And I was very disappointed with Blackburn. And it's 3 times I've seen Blackburn on TV, and both times I've seen them lose. And they've all been away games, which has really been their weakness. You can see with Blackburn, they are in the top 2, ironically, with Burnley, with the best home form in the league. Following that home win from Burnley, it actually overtakes Blackburn, actually having the best home form in the league, actually. But it's their away form. If you can see Blackburn there, they are 17th place in it comes to away form. So this is something that they're definitely going to have to work on. But Blackburn fall into 3rd. They definitely will take that going into like the start of the season expectations and into the World Cup. But considering what they did have, at the start of the season, maybe they're a tiny bit disappointed with a slight drop-off. With Burnley, this was already a season that they were going to have to transition. It was just going to be interesting to see if they can transition quickly, and for how well they've managed to execute it, I think, Burnley fans have every right to be happy. They've beaten their East Lancashire rivals, and now they've got the bragging rights, and they've got a 3-point gap from Sheffield United, and a 5-point gap from playoffs now as well following this win. So fair play to Burnley. What a game and performance and a moment that is for your club. So guys, that wraps it up for my review. This is what the Championship table is looking like after this last game week before the World Cup. So Burnley, Sheffield United in the promotion places, with Blackburn, Watford, Norwich, and now Millwall in the top 6. And then with the teams in danger, as I previously mentioned, from basically Stoke downward, you're looking at teams that could definitely go down. And with the bottom 3, it's Wigan, Blackpool, and Huddersfield with 3 to 4 points of safety. So guys, that wraps it up for today. So obviously, as I did subtly mention when I was reviewing, I am going to take a small break from YouTube. I think I've definitely earned it. I've really tried pushing the channel as much as I could. I will be back when football content's back. I've got an exam coming up, and I will be doing a World Cup sweepstake as well, which I'll be announcing on my community tab and on my Discord server. So if you want to join me on Discord, make sure you join the
top link in the description down below, which will give you instant access to the Lexalexus Discord server. So guys, that will wrap it up for today. If you guys enjoyed the video, please give the video a like. It just tremendously help the channel. Please do hit the subscribe button if you've not done so, and please also share the channel too. All those things really do help. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw any of this video, and as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.